What's up, y'all? Another Bible study, Bible reading, Galatians 4. Now I say, as long as the heir is a child, he does not differ at all from a slave, although he is owner of everything. But he is under guardians and managers until the date set by the father for him to take over. But before then, the heir, the child, is the same as a slave. Doesn't have any power, any more power than a slave or a servant would. So also we, while we were children, before coming to faith, were held in bondage, slavery, under the elemental things of the world, under the ways of the world, which is sin, the sinful ways of the world. We were a slave to sin. And in that example says, but he is under guardians and managers until the date set by the father. That's just like the tutor, under the tutor, until we come to Christ. So also we, while we were children, before coming to faith, were held in bondage under the elemental things of the world. We were under the law of sin and death. Under that punishment, we're still under sin. But when the fullness of the time came, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law. Now we can look at this two different ways. I always saw it as speaking of Mary, born under the law, because Mary was also under the law of sin and death, because she had sinned. She wasn't perfect. But it could be speaking of Jesus. Because normally when it speaks about, says under the law, it means under the punishment of the law. But if it's referring to Jesus, Yeshua, then it just means under the law, like he was in subjection to the law. He had to follow the law. God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, so that he might redeem those who were under the law of sin and death, under that punishment. And he redeems us from that punishment, that we might receive adoption as sons of God. Because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. And Abba just means Father. Therefore, you are no longer a slave. We're no longer a slave to sin. We're no longer in bondage under the law of sin and death. Because Yeshua, Jesus, takes that punishment away from us. You are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. And the only way we're anything in this life is through God. However, at that time, when you did not know God, you were slaves to those which by nature are no gods. See, most of the Galatians are Gentiles, and they served the pagan gods and sacrificed to them in the pagan temples. But now that you have come to know God, or rather be known by God, how is it that you turn back again to the weak and worthless elemental things? The sin. Back to the sin, back to the worshiping of the false gods. to which you desire to be enslaved all over again. You observe days and months and seasons and years. I fear for you that perhaps I have labored over you in vain. See, they were going back to their old ways. They accepted Jesus, accepted Yeshua, but they were still worshiping, going back and worshiping the other guys, going back to the elemental things, observing the days and months and seasons and years, observing the pagan festivals. An example of that these days would be Christmas and Easter. I suggest anyone that thinks those are about God, look into them. Look into the history of them. And a lot of people take these verses right here, observe days and months and seasons and years, as like that's speaking about the Jewish or the God's feast. But it's speaking about the pagan holidays. I beg of you, brethren, become as I am. And before I continue with this, remember that they were being won over, being influenced by the circumcision party, which were telling them in order to be saved, first, you have to be circumcised and keep the law of God. But it's the other way around. Well, we're only saved through Jesus. But once we come to faith, then we follow God and try to walk in His ways the best we can. But they were saying that's the requirement in order for salvation. So it says, I beg of you, brethren, become as I am. For I also have become as you are. Meaning in the past, he also used to try to work for his salvation. The way he used to live. Before he got the revelation of Jesus Christ and came to faith and realized the truth, he used to try to work for his salvation in Judaism. You have done me no wrong. See, the Galatians, they were kind of offended the way Paul was going, I don't want to say going against them, but condemning them in his letter. And maybe before that for following the false teachers, for following the circumcision party and falling away from the true gospel. But he's letting them know, you have done me no wrong. I'm not offended that you're upset. I'm not offended that you fell away. Like, I'm just trying to show you the right way. You have done me no wrong. But you know that it was because of a bodily illness that I preached the gospel to you the first time. And that which was a trial to you in my bodily condition, you did not despise or loathe, but you received me as an angel of God, as Christ Jesus himself. So it was kind of tough on them. It was a trial to them to learn from him the first time while he was sick, I guess. But they accepted him like he was Yeshua himself, like he was Jesus himself. Where then is that sense of blessing you had? For I bear witness that, if possible, you would have plucked out your own eyes and given them to me. So have I become your enemy by telling you the truth? See, they were offended at the way he was telling them the truth. To stay away from these false teachers. Come out of, stop going back into to the pagan gods and and follow God, follow the truth. They eagerly seek you, not commendably, speaking of the false teachers, but they wish to shut you out so that you will seek them. Now, this translation makes that part kind of confusing. The NIV made it a little simpler. I'm going to read this verse out of the NIV. Galatians 4:17. Those people, speaking of the false teachers, the circumcision party, those people are zealous to win you over, but for no good. What they want is to alienate you from us, so that you may have zeal for them. It is fine to be zealous, provided the purpose is good, and to be so always, not just when I am with you. I'm going to just go back and read it again out of the NASB. That's what I'm reading out of. They eagerly seek you, but not commendably. But they wish to shut you out from me, from Paul, so that you will seek them. They're trying to shut them out from Paul so they would follow their ways and be circumcised and believing that they have to be circumcised and follow the law in order to be saved. But it is good always to be eagerly sought in a commendable manner, and not only when I am present with you. My children, with whom I am again in labor until Christ is formed in you. See, he considered them children, and he was going through the pains of trying to birth them into true faith till they're mature in the faith and truly born again. But I could wish to be present with you now and change my tone, for I am perplexed about you. It's like, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know what to do about how you're acting. Tell me, you who want to be under law. Now this is speaking of they basically wanted to be under law, under the law of sin and death, because the way they were trying to earn their salvation by being circumcised and following the law, believing that they had to be circumcised and follow the law first in order to be saved. And that put them under the law of sin and death. Do you not listen to the law? Now that law, see, every law he talks about is different. See, right after this, he starts speaking about a story about Abraham. Do you not listen to the law? The law is considered the first 5 books of the Bible. And this story was written in the law. Do you not listen to the law? And it could also be speaking about the law of God, because it explains it too. For it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, one by a bondwoman and one by a free woman. But the son by the bondwoman was born according to the flesh, meaning God didn't provide Abraham a child by that point, so he tried to take it into his own hands and have a child with Hagar instead of his wife. by his own works. For it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, one by the bondwoman and one by the free woman. But the son by the bondwoman was born according to the flesh, by works. And the son of the free woman through the promise, which is basically the Spirit. This is allegorically speaking. For these women are 2 covenants, one proceeding from Mount Sinai, bearing children who are to be slaves. She is Hagar. Now this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present Jerusalem. For she is in slavery with her children. The present Jerusalem at the time was in slavery with her children, with the residents of Jerusalem, with the Jews. The Jews were still in slavery. Hagar, the woman representing trying to do it on your own, trying to earn your salvation. Because that's what the Jews were doing. They were trying to earn their salvation. And that's tied to Hagar and the son that was born to her by the flesh, the way Abraham tried to do it himself instead of waiting on the promises of God. But the Jerusalem above is free. The new Jerusalem, which is going to come down out of heaven. And that's where we're going to live. That's the city that has the streets of gold. But the Jerusalem above is free. She is our mother. For it is written, "Rejoice, barren woman, who does not bear. Break forth and shout, you who are not in labor. For more numerous are the children of the desolate than the one who has a husband." The children of the desolate. See, the Gentiles were the desolate. There weren't a lot of people from the Gentiles, hardly any, that were of the faith of God, that had the faith of God. More numerous are the children of the desolate than the one who has a husband. The one who has a husband, that's the Jews, the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Judah was never divorced by God. The tribe of Judah is still married to God. The house of Israel was divorced. The house of Israel is the northern 10 tribes. The southern 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, are the Jews, or the house of Judah. The northern 10 tribes, the other 10 tribes, were divorced by God and scattered into the nations. That's the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and became the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And the house of Israel in prophecy is non-Jewish believers in the Messiah. It says, "For more numerous are the children of the desolate than the one who has a husband." That's from Isaiah 54, and that also ties in to the story of Hannah. Hannah was desolate, was barren before she bore Samuel. And the prayer of Hannah right here in 1 Samuel 2 says it's a type and shadow. It's a foreshadowing. It says, even the barren, the desolate, gives birth to seven. Seven churches. Seven churches in Revelation. But she who has many children, Israel or Judah, languishes. Even the barren gives birth to seven. Seven churches, the Gentiles. But she who has many children, the Jews, languishes. Now let's go back to here. And it's comparing Hagar to the Jews because they were trying to work for their salvation. And Sarah actually, it doesn't even mention Sarah, but the child of the promise was Isaac from Sarah. And that's what's mentioned next here. Rejoice, barren woman who does not bear. Break forth and shout, you who are not in labor. For more numerous are the children of the desolate than the one who has a husband. More numerous are the children of the desolate, the seven churches of the Gentiles are more numerous as far as faith, as far as salvation, because they're not trying to do it not trying to earn their salvation by works, like a lot of the Jews are. So the children of the Gentiles are more numerous, and that's compared to the New Jerusalem, than the one who has a husband, which is the Jews. And you, brethren, like Isaac, are the children of promise. But as at that time, he who was born according to the flesh persecuted him who was born according to the Spirit. Ishmael persecuted Isaac. It says, so it is now also. The Jews were persecuting the believers in Jesus, in Yeshua. But what does the scripture say? Cast out the bondwoman and her son. For the son of the bondwoman shall not be an heir with the son of the free woman. Because you can't earn your salvation. To be free, you need to come to faith in Messiah. So then, brethren, we are not children of a bondwoman, but of the free woman, because we have faith in Yeshua and Jesus. Hope you guys were able to understand that. That was another difficult chapter, but that's the end of Galatians 4. May God bless you guys.